This is a continuation of the protocol for getting client-sourced content. We had talked about recording before that content, and now this is what it looks like in editing. So the transcript will likely just come over like this. It's pretty rugged. It needs to be touched up. The conversational things need to be removed, and then when it's being edited, being presented in a way where there's sub-headlines, where it has a flow, and I'll give you an example of how it sort of may come over looking. It's not going to come over with the different topics being broken up when it's coming over from transcriber. So we're starting that off, and right now I can tell that there's nothing here about fresh embryo transfers as a headline. We're going from one topic to the next. So I'm taking some of this raw text and turning it into a page for the website. For example, as I end this topic about ICSI, it's written in such a way that says ICSI can be used with significant sperm factor issues, male factor, prior failed, extremely low fertilization, and to some extent long duration of otherwise unexplained fertility. I'm going to spruce that up into a bulleted summary. And voila, I've given it a bit of a sub-headline, a nice summary with bulleted points here of what ICSI is for. So that wraps up ICSI. That's going to be a completely different page. Since we're sending this back to the client for final approval, we'll send it into different pages so that it's easy for them. So we can just title this as ICSI. That way it's easy for the doctor to read and understand and approve. We're going to go ahead and cut the rest of the content. We'll put it in a completely different document. We'll paste it over here and then get to work on the process. And we will save the one document by the title that it is. In this case, we're talking about intro cytoplasmic sperm injection. So that's what we're going to save it in the client's folder. Voila, it's going into the client's folder, ICSI page for new website. There's no title for this yet, this page, this subtopic. So this is where we go from just making it something that the doctor was talking about into an actual page that is separate for their website or whatever the content assignment that we might be working on. I just sort of read through to see what it's talking about, and I can see that it's talking about fresh cycles versus frozen, explaining what frozen embryo transfers are. So I want to go in and take some of this raw content and turn it into a page about frozen embryo transfer, FET. Great example. It starts with in vitro fertilization. The process is basically the female patient takes a combination of medications to elicit the recruitment and maturation of multiple eggs. That's not grammatically correct. We want to touch that up and also remove things like basically because it might fit in a conversation, but it doesn't make for well-written web content. We also want to make sure things are written properly because the transcriber might not know that in vitro is 2 words. We want to capitalize that. We want to, for example, put in parentheses IVF. These are the touch-ups that we make. Touching up these paragraphs, an example of something conversational is we would never transfer 5 embryos, especially to a younger woman. Again, we don't want to necessarily use the first person in this case when we're talking about a medical example. So we're going to change, we would never transfer 5 embryos, especially to a younger woman. Perhaps you may transfer 1 or 2. We're going to take this paragraph and turn it into something that reads better, more like something like this. Much better. Today, virtually no IVF center would transfer 5 embryos, especially to a younger woman. Instead, 1 or 2 embryos would be transferred, depending on the center's protocol, which is generally 5 days after the egg retrieval. In this stage, the embryo is called a blastocyst. Just reads a lot better. It's better for the page. And if we're not 100% correct from a medical standpoint as writers, when we send this back to the physician, these are the things that we're asking the physician to be on the lookout for. Now this is ready to become its own page. It's about frozen embryo transfer, and we have a bunch of different subheadings that I've gone in And as the doctor had talked about different topics, we can answer different questions that a prospective patient might have, and those become our subheadings. What's the difference between an embryo and blastocyst? You might want to title it, "What is a blastocyst?" You may have a take on these subtitles, and I welcome the most powerful and the most creative, the most compelling, really, and clearest. And we just want them to be there. We want to break up the page. So none of this existed before. We touched up all of the copy. We created these subheadings of what is cryopreservation, what is a fresh cycle, what are freeze-all cycles, what's vitrification, and we have finished this frozen embryo transfer page, so we're ready to start the whole thing over again, because I noticed that these next topics are not regarding frozen embryo transfer. We finished frozen embryo transfer, so we're going to cut this content and we're going to save this page. And that is the way we like to write and edit our copy from client-sourced web content.